I was talking to a friend yesterday, someone I met in the UK and have remained friends with. This is someone I met when I was in nursing school, and she is a Zimbabwean like myself. And we were talking about the challenges of staying in contact with family, even close family members, when you leave home and you're now living in the diaspora. And we were trying to figure out, why is it that it can be so challenging to maintain that closeness with family members once you leave home. And I started to reflect on how it felt when you first arrive, the overwhelming sense of I need to get on with it, as in I need to start making money. So that preoccupation with I need to start making money can consume you to a point where you fail to also prioritize the other important aspects of life, like family. So this friend was telling me that she recently managed to bring her brother to the UK. And since he's come, he's not really made much of an effort to visit her and come and spend time with her. And this was really bothering her. It was really bothering her. And we started to talk about it. And I reminded her of our first days when we were first in the UK, and how we felt this need and this urgency to work, and earn. And we had all these goals that we wanted to achieve. And I was thinking about how that pace, that change in pace, can sort of become the thing that controls you almost, because if you don't work, you can't pay your rent, you can't eat, you can't pay for transportation, you basically can't do anything, and you're so far from home. It's not like you can say, oh, okay, well, I didn't work, I'll be fine because I live at my mother's house, or I'll be fine because I live with my uncle, whatever. So I was reminding my friend to have some grace, to show him grace, and to try and think of things from his perspective, how it might feel for him now being new in the UK, the change of pace, the demands of all these bills that you may not have been used to when you're back home. Because at home, for many people, the pressure to pay rent may not be that urgent, especially if you have parents that own a home and you're still living at home, even as a very grown-up adult. That urgency might not be there. There might be urgency with maybe paying for food or paying for water or electricity or whatever. But when you're far from home and you have to figure out how to pay for just somewhere to sleep, it becomes less important to you at that point to think about, let me connect with family, let me spend time with family. And I remember those first days, I was fortunate enough to be able to stay connected with family members that were also in the UK. But then I found that I would go for years without seeing cousins that were there. And these are cousins that I had grown up with, people who lived very near where we lived. People I was close to, my cousins that I would see weekly, more than once a week sometimes. And all of a sudden, they became people that I wouldn't see for years. And it's only when I got older that I realized that I have to make an effort to go and see them. I have to make an effort to maintain those relationships. And I told myself, whether they're able to come and visit me as well or not, I'm going to go and see them, because I've decided that it's important to me to see them. And if they're not able to come and see me for whatever reasons, that's okay, because I'm making this decision on my end. They're important to me, and I'm going to make an effort to go and see them whenever I can. So it became very important to, if it was, for example, a child's birthday, I would try and have a home birthday party, just like we would have at home in Zimbabwe, where you have, your cake, drinks, and food, and the family gathers, you play some music, and you connect, as opposed to the typical sort of British kids' birthday parties where kids go to like a soft play area, or or trampoline park, something like that. Because if I have an opportunity to get together with family, I'm gonna take it, because it became very clear to me very urgently, I would say, as I got older, that I had lost so many years in those first few years trying to just figure out life in the UK. I had lost years of connection with cousins that were very, very important to me. And so at that time, I was just thinking, I need to make up for the time that I've lost with them. I need to connect with them. We need to be close. My kids need to know who they are, and I need to know their kids, and so on and so on. And I have to say that I'm blessed in that my cousins are people that also value family in the same way, because that was something that was instilled in us growing up, that we were close and we had to stay close and we had to be there for each other. So even, some of you will identify with this. The word cousin is just non-existent. Your brothers and your sisters. Obviously, if it's your Tite's kids, then they are your children. They will call you Mainini, and if you're a guy, they'll call you Sekur. So I feel blessed that my cousins were also in that same sort of frame of mind, where they valued that connection that we had and maintaining it. So when relatives are far away, the people that you're going to be seeing more of, and people who also become your support system, are friends, especially people that you work with as a nurse, because you're spending at least 40 hours a week at work with other nurses, and what you experience as nurses caring for other people, the sad moments and the really joyful moments, all that you're sharing with these people on a daily basis, they become very important to you. So I made such good friends, people who had a very huge impact on my life. I never made any close British friends, which is in stark contrast to my experience in America, where Americans, in my experience, are very, very welcoming, and they value friendship, they value family on a much deeper level than I ever experienced in the UK. So when I arrived in the States, I was a bit taken aback by how they were, I guess, curious, but curious in a very, what would you say, harmless way. You could tell that they're curious, but it's not the kind of curiosity where they're thinking, go back where you came from, which was something that in the UK was not uncommon. British people, not all British people, but many of them, were very open about how they did not want foreigners in their country. In America, it's never been an issue. In fact, the moment they know you're foreign, when I got to the first city I arrived in Arizona, and one nurse that I was working with became aware that I had just arrived, I didn't have a car yet, she knew I had children, and she had already made up her mind that we were going to be friends, and she was going to make sure that I was okay. So she starts asking me about myself. So where are you from? You have kids? How old are you, and all that? And it was just pure curiosity. So I was answering all these questions, but at the back of my mind, because I wasn't, I didn't know that Americans were like this. At the back of my mind, I was thinking, my goodness, this one is a bit much. But and then she told me that, oh, we're going to be friends. And I said, oh, we are? And she goes, yeah, we are. And sure enough, we became friends. And she would make sure that while we were at work, we would work together most of our shifts. She would make sure that while we were at work, our kids were playing together, that they would spend the day together almost every day. If they went on day trips, they would go together. Whatever they were doing together. And then she would proactively ask me what I needed help with. And you cannot place a value on someone who does that. It's invaluable. She was like, oh, you don't have a car? Here, why don't you borrow my car today and drive to Las Vegas or whatever it is and go and buy a car? Why don't you go and look for a car? Because if you don't have a car, then you can't move around, so you can use my car. And sure, in that town, in that city, you couldn't do anything without a car. Uber was it was there, but I think there was one Uber driver in the whole city because the city was so small. So she would proactively ask. I never had to ask for any help with anything, but she would proactively ask me what I needed help with and help with that, which in the UK, that just would never have happened in my experience anyway. And then I think back to the good friends that I made in the UK that were not Zimbabwean. And they came in the form of other Africans. I remember when I was a very young nurse in my second job, a Nigerian nurse who was a little bit older than I was. She said to me, where do you live? And I told her. And she says, have you bought a house yet? I said, no, I haven't. And she goes, why not? I said, I don't think I can afford one. And then she goes, of course you can. You can afford to buy a little flat in London. She was already thinking about the things that I might not know at my age. And she said to me, you need to start putting away this amount of money every single month and save a deposit and buy a place. And just her saying that made me think differently, because I had already written myself off and told myself, no, you can't afford a house, you can't afford to buy anything. But this person saw that I was young and I might need advice, and maybe nobody's given me this advice. And she said to me, you just need to save this amount every single month from your salary and have a deposit and buy yourself a place. And then I also had much older friends who were also other Africans from Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and they've remained friends with me now. And these are people who would be helpful in many, many different ways. For example, when you're still new to work, to the concept of being an employee, and you're still sort of emotionally immature, where you don't know how to deal with conflict in the workplace, they would coach me, and say, hey, when somebody says this to you, you can respond in this way, and this is how you deal with a situation like that. So I learned a lot from older African nurses and midwives who would just offer advice and coaching. And I look back and I think, wow, I was so lucky to have these people around, because there were situations at work where either you felt really, really mistreated, or you felt like injustices had been served, and they would tell you how to go about it. If anyone knows Nigerians, Nigerians don't take nonsense from anyone. They know how to stand up for themselves. And that's something I learned from working with them. They were very protective, and I just knew that if I was working with them and somebody tried to take advantage of me, it just wouldn't happen, because they would speak up and support me. Even just knowing that, oh, you're tired today, you tell them, I had a tough day at home, I didn't manage to sleep because of this, that, and the other. They would step in and say, listen, this is how we're going to sort out our work assignments today so that you can get to rest, or whatever it is. Friendships were very, very, very important, and they still are. They're still very important, and they make life away from home so rich and so fulfilling because of that. And then I look at present day. Present day, I guess I'm in a different phase of life where I'm now that older African. I'm now that older African lady who gives advice to younger people. So many of the friends that I make at work are younger, either nurses or patient care technicians, or whatever, people that I work with who are much younger than I am, who will say to me, let's go out for dinner, or let's go out for drinks. And if I say, no, I'm tired, I want to rest, some of them just won't take no for an answer. You know how Gen Zs are. They'll just tell you, you need to make it happen. We're meeting up and we're going to spend time together. And then you go and they tell you their problems, and and then you're now that older African person who's giving advice and listening, and in return, you're getting. I suppose I learn a lot from younger people too. People in their 20s have a level of emotional maturity that I haven't seen in a long time. I don't know what it is with these Gen Zs, but they have such good communication skills. They have very good emotional intelligence. They are very good at expressing their needs. They're very good at setting boundaries. I don't know if it's the fact that they've had all this exposure to social media, which we didn't have, where they can learn about these things and are better prepared for the world than we ever were. I don't know, but I find it really refreshing to be around them. But overall, friendships have been extremely important living in the diaspora. Many people who are friends have become family, especially people that have been friends from the very beginning. There's one girl I met, I think on our first day of nursing school. She's a Zimbabwean, and she's remained a friend from then. So over, I'd say 25 years of knowing this person, we know each other's families, we know what each other is up to, we check in on each other, and we care about each other in the same way that family does. So friendship is extremely, extremely important in the diaspora. And yeah, that's the story about friendship.